Welcome, everyone, to Torah is for Everyone. Brian, what's the Torah portion this week?
Kittzze.
Right, Ki Tetze, when you go out. So welcome, Brian. Welcome, Miriam. And welcome, Richard. And for those of you who are watching online, I really hope that, I don't even know how to say it. You know, when I read through the Torah, I just get so excited because there's so much we can learn, so much we can learn and that apply to our lives today, the apply to what's happening in the world. And the most important thing to remember when we look at the Hebrew of the Torah is to remember it's not like other languages. As we read through, see if you can find certain themes. Okay? Brian, are you talking to me or are you talking to someone else?
Picture language.
It's a language of pictures. Like it says that one picture can paint 1,000 words. And some of the themes, there's going to be loads of regulations tonight, and they almost seem boring. So if as I'm reading some of these regulations, don't be afraid to interrupt me, because I always look for a theme, for a thread that can go through all of them. And as I was reading it, I can see that it's a continuation of last week where God talked about justice, that we must pursue justice, tzedek, tirdof. And you'll see that there are certain things like we have to care for the weakest among us. It's not like the Darwin ideology that talks about the survival of the fittest. God wants us to take care of the weakest. And you'll see the ones that talk about that. And then you'll see the ones that speak about the sanctity of the family, how important the unit of the family is, the father and mother, and how that is falling apart in our society today. And it's really to the detriment of our children and to the next generation. And then we see the things that pertain to the land. The land is a living entity and it belongs to God. And God separated it. He created it. He formed it. And no one else can take this land. It belongs to him. You know, one of the things I was realizing about it, Miriam, because I'm reading, again, The Lord of the Rings. And the land of Israel is in the Middle East. But in the Torah, in the Tanakh, it's called the navel of the earth. It's like the center of the earth. So in the Lord of the Rings, it's called Middle Earth.
Right.
And that's what
I'm
we're
sure
looking at.
that's not a mistake.
No,
or a coincidence.
No, exactly.
Right.
And in the same way, you know, Adam was given one rule to keep. He was given the garden to take care of, and one rule: do not eat of the knowledge of the tree of good and evil. And that when he sinned, meaning he went against God's word, he was kicked out of the land. God's land is like his garden, was meant to be his Garden of Eden. And we, Israel, we were given, instead of one, we were given 10 rules. And when we don't keep them, we got kicked out of the land. And we are continuing on the process of going back to the land and the redemption of the land back to the Garden of Eden. It's a beautiful cycle. So let's, without further ado, let me share the screen and let's read it together. And don't be afraid to interrupt or to ask any questions or to give comments. Now, remember, last time we were speaking about justice, and here it says, when you, meaning he was speaking to the warriors, take the field against your enemies, and your God, Yud-He-Vav-He, delivers them into your power, and you take some of them captive. You see among the captives a beautiful woman, and you desire her, and you take her into your household as your wife. Bring her into your house, trim her hair, pare her nails, change the garb she wore as a captive. Let her spend a month in your household, mourning her father and mother. After that, you may take her as your wife, and you shall be her husband. Then you shall know, but if you no longer want her, you have to release her outright. Do not sell her for money, since you had your way with her. You must not enslave her. Look how different this is than when the other nations, like right now, Hamas has come into Israel and he's taken these beautiful women captives. And what did he do with them? What did they do? They raped them. They kept them captives. There is no justice, no mercy in our enemy. But God does not want us to be like them. He wants us to be compassionate toward every member of society, even the animals. If a householder or the head of the house has two wives, one who is loved and the other unloved, and both the loved and the unloved have borne him sons, but the firstborn is the son of the unloved one, when he wills his property to his sons, he may not treat as firstborn the son of the loved one in disregard of the son of the unloved one. So here the unloved one is the firstborn son. And so he can't take the one who's loved and give him the inheritance. He must accept the firstborn, the son of the unloved, and allot him a double portion of all he possesses. This doesn't really pertain to us today because we don't have the husband doesn't have two wives in this modern time. In some religions they do. You see that in Mormons, you see it in Islam. They have other wives, but in the Christian world they have abolished that. But still, it talks about justice. Remember, just because someone isn't loved doesn't mean that he shouldn't receive justice. If a father has a wayward and defiant son who does not heed his father or mother and does not obey him, even after they discipline him, his parents shall take hold of him and bring him to the elders of his town, the public place of his community. And they shall say to the elders of his town, "This son of ours is disloyal and defiant. He doesn't listen to us. He's a glutton and he's a drunkard." So the town's council shall stone him to death. Thus you will sweep out evil from your midst. All Israel will hear and be afraid. We're going to see this one line. Thus you will sweep out evil from your midst over and over and over again. Remember, we were coming out of pagan religions where the way of life was wicked in many, many, many areas. And God was taking us away from that. And here he was teaching the children that they need to honor their parents. They need to be obedient to their parents, because if they don't listen to their mother and father, they would never listen to God, and they will not listen to any other authority. And here was the beginning of the formation of Israel, so all Israel would hear and be afraid. Right now, I remember watching a video of a new prison system in El Salvador, this new president instituted. It was a terror confinement center. There are, I think, something like 79,000 prisoners that belong to gangs that were arrested and put into these prisons where they absolutely have no rights. And everybody now is so afraid of breaking the law that there's justice in the land, that people aren't afraid anymore because the gang members were taking over. And God is doing that to Israel because he wants justice to rule in the land. If any party is guilty of a capital offense, like murder, and is put to death, you shall impale the body on a stake. You must not let the corpse remain on the stake overnight. You must bury it the same day. This is one of the reasons that Yeshua was taken down from the Roman stake. He was still in the land, and he was buried at night. It was because of this that people took him down. For an impaled body is an affront to God. You shall not defile the land that your God, Yud He Vav He, is giving you to possess. God is giving us the rules so that we do not defile the land. We understand the land to be a living entity. The ground is alive. It brings forth live food. It sustains us. Many people call it Mother Earth. It's a living being. And so we must treat it well. If your fellow Israelite's ox or sheep has gone astray, do not ignore it. Take it back to your neighbor, your peer, the person that you know, your brother. If your fellow Israelite does not live near you, or you do not know who the owner is, you shall bring it home, and it shall remain with you until your peer claims it. Then you shall give it back. You shall do the same with that person's donkey. You shall do the same with that person's garment. So shall you do with anything that your fellow Israelite loses and you find. You must not remain indifferent. If you
It's
see
funny,
your
remember the kids' line, finders, keepers, losers, weepers?
right, that's totally opposite to what the
Yeah.
Torah teaches. And it's interesting because what happened with you and I, Miriam, this week, for the others who are listening, Miriam came over here and we were going to go out for a walk. We went downstairs and there was a lady sitting in the hall and on the seat. And did she ask you something, Miriam? Did she speak to you?
Yeah,
Do
we talked about, she gave me the groundwork of what was happening. She's coming to visit her friend. And
Yeah, she was asking us if we knew anything about this friend of hers. And I knew immediately from her description who the friend was. She lives on my floor. It's an elderly lady who gets sometimes very famished. And she was a visitor, a Jewish lady from New Brunswick who was a visitor and was coming to take her out for supper before she goes back to New Brunswick the following day. She was waiting for an hour downstairs and she didn't know what to do. It would have been very easy for Miriam and I to just say, well, good luck, and go out for our walk. It was a beautiful day and we wanted to get out. But we didn't do that because we need to live the Torah. So I immediately called the landlord, the janitor, to see if he was able to get in touch with the woman, if he had the key. He wasn't in the building and he wasn't anywhere close by. So I called a neighbor and the neighbor had her daughter's phone number. She called her daughter. Her daughter happened to be on her way over because she also couldn't reach her mother. So by the time we left, there was another lady who had just come in, another Jewish lady. Miriam and I are Jews. This lady is Jewish. All of us gathered together to help this woman resolve the issue, and we didn't leave until it was resolved. We went out of our way to help somebody we didn't even know. And that's what the Torah teaches. That brings light into the world. And all these people were influenced by that. They all saw, wow, look what we're doing. And they all felt so good to be able to help someone. And it turned out the other lady down the hall now has a key. So if anything happens to Ivanka, she's going to be able to get into her apartment. But it was a testimony, and that's something we must remember, that we are our brother's keeper. And here it says, if you see your fellow Israelite's donkey or ox fallen on the road, don't ignore it. Raise it up together. Don't leave it for someone else. Step in there. Now, this is a very interesting one. A woman must not put on a man's clothing, nor shall a man wear woman's clothing. For whoever does these things is abhorrent to your God, Yud He Vav He. So remember what I said about Hebrew is a language of pictures. Now, we're not to take it literally. Like, there's nothing wrong with if I'm a kid and I want to go put on my father's suit and tie and play around. It's not what this is talking about. What it's talking about, that a man needs to be a man and a woman needs to be a woman, and they were given roles. The wife and the husband, the male and the female form what's called a family unit. That's what God created. When we get away from that, we are creating chaos, which is what we are seeing today. Men who want to be women, women who want to be men. Nobody knows who anybody is. There's more pronouns, and it's a mishigas that's driving everybody crazy. And it goes against what God is saying. To me, that's what this means. Does that make sense to you?
Totally. Yeah, it makes sense. It's not to be taken. I mean, obviously, women wear jeans and stuff, and Scots wear kilts. It's not literal, but it's we know when we cross the line. Well, anyway, you said it.
Yes.
It's that's what it is.
Exactly. And here is a picture of God's mercy. Now remember, the pagan religions were merciless. They would take an animal, cut off a leg, and eat the leg raw while the animal was still alive. They would kill an animal, pull out its heart, and eat it for strength. I mean, pagans were, and even today, are merciless. And here, look what God is telling us. If you're walking along the road and you happen to see a bird's nest in a tree or on the ground with little birds or eggs, and the mother is sitting over the baby chicks or on the eggs, do not take the mother together with her young. Let the mother go and take only the young, in order that you may fare well and have a long life. He's not telling us not to take the chicks, because when we take chicks, we can make more chickens. Well, we can have like a flock at home. But it's it's saying, let the mother go. The mother is not human, so it doesn't have the same um, uh, feelings that when a child is kidnapped, it's not the same as a human. And don't even take the eggs. Let the mother go, because the mother will have more eggs and she'll be able to, procreate again. But this is to show compassion for the animals so that you may fare well and have a long life. And when we're not kind to animals, that's what we're not going to be kind to humans. When you build a new house, make sure that you have a structure around the roof so that somebody doesn't fall off and you bring blood guilt on your house. You must protect the people who come to visit you. When you sow your vineyard with a second kind of seed from the crop that you usually sow, and the yield of the vineyard may not be used. They don't want two kinds of seeds to be sown in the same place, because one may be stronger than the other and one may overtake the other. And he tells us that with other things, like don't plow your field using one ox and one donkey, because the ox will grow exhausted because the donkey cannot pull its weight. And here, don't wear clothing combining wool and linen, because when you wash it, the wool will shrink, the linen won't. So you're going to get a piece of material that's all fraudrate. It just doesn't make sense. These are just common sense things that we need to learn how to do. Make tassels on the four corners of the garments with which you cover yourself. These are the tzitzit, so that when the men wear them, they know that whatever they do, God is watching. When a householder takes a woman as his wife and lives with her, then suddenly he doesn't like her anymore. He takes an aversion to her, and he makes up charges against her, and he defames her, saying, "This is the woman that I took to wife, and when I approached her, I found she wasn't a virgin." In such a case, the girl's father and mother shall produce the evidence of the girl's virginity before the elders of the town. That's why it was a practice on the wedding night that they would take the sheet or the piece of the sheet that had the blood to prove that she was a virgin in cases of this. And the girl's father shall say to the elders, to this party I gave my own daughter to wife. He has taken aversion to her. So he made up charges saying, I did not find your daughter a virgin. Here is the evidence of my daughter's virginity. And they shall spread out the cloth before the elders of the town. The elders of the town shall take them and flog them. And they shall fine him 100 shekels of silver and give it to the girl's father, for that householder has defamed a virgin in Israel. Moreover, she shall remain his wife, and he shall never have the right to divorce her. Now, it's showing us that there's something special about the virginity of a woman. This is one aspect. There are many things that this is showing, but one aspect that we have lost in this modern world is the state of virginity. You know, the marriage bed has been defiled. I remember when I was going to school, the girls would say, I wonder who's going to be the first one to lose their virginity. You know, the 60s made a mess of things. And look at the result in the world today. The act of sex is like the act of eating. It's become an animalistic thing instead of understanding that the union of two people is a spiritual union. And that state of virginity is so important in Israel. And we don't see that anymore. We don't see that in Israel. And there's consequences of that are millions of abortions because we have not taught this to our young boys and girls growing up in our homes. Let's continue. But if the charge proves true and the girl was found not to have been a virgin, then the girl shall be brought to the entrance of her father's house, and her town's council shall stone her to death. That's how serious this was then. For she did a shameful thing in Israel, having sex with somebody else while under her father's roof. Thus you will sweep away evil from your midst. If God was doing that today, a lot of people would be swept away, let me tell you. But we've having a lot of problems in the world because of this, because we've lost this concept.
What would you say if somebody, well, like I could think of so many people who would point to this verse and say, how is it possible that you kill somebody because they've lost their virginity? I mean, I know I understand why it's wrong, but it seems like I've always thought, what can I say? And the only thing I could think to say is what you said before, that God's is taking Israel out of the nations for a special purpose. So he wants to separate them from the practices around them that were evil. So that's the only thing I could say for the urgency and seeming, to be stoned to death for losing your virginity. It just seems so.
We don't know how many cases, if any, that there were of people being stoned, but it certainly was a warning to the people. If you're warned, if we reinstitute capital punishment, a lot of people will think twice before committing the crime that is so easy for them to commit. So we don't know that it actually happened, but there are laws that are made for a reason. And this was a law that was made for a reason because God wanted the purity of the woman in marriage, before marriage. So he instituted that law. How many were stoned? I don't know if any were.
Okay.
And if a man is found lying with another man's wife, both of them, the man and the woman with whom he lay, shall die. Today, this is promoted in Hollywood. Today, there's no big deal around this, but this is adultery. Thus, you will sweep away evil from Israel. It's one of the commandments. In the case of a virgin who is engaged to someone, if another man comes upon her in town and lies with her, you shall take 2 of them out to the gate of that town and stone them to death. The girl, because she did not cry for help in the town, remember the towns were very small, and if she cried out, everybody would have heard, somebody would have heard. And the man, because he violated his neighbor's wife. Thus you will sweep away evil from your midst. Again, We don't know how people were, but they were warned against it, and there was a law. This is going to happen if you do this. But if the man comes upon the engaged girl in the open country, and the man lies with her by force, he rapes her, only the party who lay with her shall die. You shall do nothing to the girl. The girl did not incur the death penalty, for this is the case like that one party attacking and murdering another, just like what happened right now with Hamas, how they came. Well, we'll see that a little later on. He came upon her in the open. Though the engaged girl cried for help, there was no one to save her because they were out in the country. If a man comes upon a virgin who is not engaged and he seizes her and lies with her, and they are discovered, the one who lay with her shall pay the girl's father 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife. Because he violated her, he can never have the right to divorce her. No householder shall take his father's former wife as his own, so as to remove his father's garment. I don't know what this means. No householder shall take his father's former wife. Okay, the wife of his father, so as to remove his father's garment. No man whose testicles are crushed or whose member is cut off shall be admitted in the congregation of God. I don't know why. I know that they couldn't serve, but why they can't even come in, I don't know why, to tell you the truth. This we would have to do some research on. No one begotten shall be admitted into the congregation of the Lord, no descendant of such, even in the 10th generation. I think this is someone who is born a bastard, whose mother and father aren't married, shall be admitted into the congregation of the Lord to the 10th generation. God was trying to keep at the beginning, this is all at the beginning of Israel, to keep the purity of the people. And here it says, no Ammonite or Moabite. Those are the two children who were born from the incestual Lot and his two daughters. They shall not be admitted into the congregation of the Lord. No descendants, even in the 10th generation, shall ever be admitted into the congregation of the Lord, because they did not meet you with food and water on your journey after you left Egypt, and because they hired Balaam, son of Beor, from Petor of Aram Naharaim to curse you. So that's another reason. But we see, and now I don't know how many generations afterwards, but Ruth was a Moabite, and she was allowed into the congregation. Her heart was so strong to follow the God of Israel. So obviously, sins can be forgiven. But if your God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, refused to heed Balaam, instead, your God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, turned the curse into a blessing for you, for your God loves you.
Peggy, I think Ruth converted before, when she was with her mother-in-law. She said, your people shall be my people, etc. So I think there was a different circumstances as well.
Exactly. She chose with all her heart to follow the God of Israel. She said, your people shall be my people, your God, my God. And that's what God looks for. Because I know, believe it or not, I know plenty of women who have converted to Judaism because they wanted to marry a Jewish man that they met. And right after, if they got a divorce, right afterwards, they went back to be who they were. It wasn't in their heart. They weren't a Ruth. You shall never concern yourself with their welfare or benefit as long as you live. You shall not abhor an Edomite. That was from Esau, for he is your kin. Esau was the twin of Jacob. You shall not hate an Egyptian, for you were a stranger in the land. Children born to them may be admitted into the congregation of the Lord in the 3rd generation. When your men go out as a troop against your enemies, be on your guard against anything untoward. If anyone among you has been rendered impure by a nocturnal emission, he must leave the camp. He must not re-enter the camp. God is giving us here rules of cleanliness. Toward evening he shall bathe in water, and at sundown he may re-enter the camp. I don't know where this has anything to do with anything today. I don't know if any others do, but really it's all about the laws of purity, of cleanliness. Now this one here, there shall be an area for you outside the camp where you may relieve yourself. With your gear you shall have a spike, and when you have squatted, you shall dig a hole with it and cover up your excrement. God is teaching the Israelites how to stay clean, that their latrines would be outside the camp, nowhere near their water source, nowhere near the food that they eat, but outside. And all through the history, all through the times, wherever plagues broke out, it was usually because they did not have those things in place. But wherever the Jews lived, they always did it. And that's why we were blamed for the plagues, because we had a law of cleanliness and the other nations needed to learn from us. Today we have that, and it's, believe it or not, taken from here. Since your God, Yud He Vav He, moves about in your camp to protect you and to deliver your enemies to you, let your camp be holy, separated to God. Let God not find anything unseemly among you and turn away from you. Just think of that with us today. Our God walks with us. He moves about in our camp. That to me
A
is
marvelous verse.
it's a
Beautiful.
marvelous verse. Marvelous when I think of that today. Because it's so easy to be discouraged by when you look at what's going on in the world. It's almost like you want to hide your face, and then you read this. You shall not turn over to the master a slave who seeks refuge with you from that master. Such individuals shall live with you in any place they may choose among the settlements in your midst. Wherever they please, you must not ill-treat them. Look how different this was from what happened in the South. When a slave was mistreated by its master and tried to escape, they were taken back and killed and punished. And here God is telling us, do not stop them from seeking refuge with you if a master has mistreated them, but let them live with you and do not ill-treat them. That's what we were taught. And it was always the Jews who were at the forefront of the movement to free the slaves, even though today there's such a movement of anti-Semitism among the blacks. They forget our history. No Israelite shall be a prostitute. Now look at this word. Lo tihye kadesha, from the word kadosh, holy, separate. You see, kadosh doesn't only mean holy with a halo. It means separated, holy, separated to something. God wants us separated to him. Here, no Israelite woman should be separated to prostitutions. That was a pagan practice. There were the temples of Diana, the different temples, Ishtar, where the women were temple prostitutes. God does not want that from the Israelite women. We were not to be like that. Nor shall any man, Israelite man, velo yihyeh kadesh, that was a kadesh again, among the Israelites. You will not bring the fee of a prostitute or the pay of a dog. In those days, the prostitutes were called dogs. The word is kelev, which goes to show you, because kelev were also called, the Gentiles were known as kelev, but kelev also means from the heart. It means someone who has a big heart. So it depends on the context when you're reading a word. You will not bring the fee of a prostitute or the pay of a dog into the temple, the house of your Lord, in fulfillment of any vow, for both are abhorrent to your God. It reminds me of how in the Catholic Church they had a mafioso could come and bring money that he made from the sale of drugs and give it to the priests and be forgiven for their sin. God is saying, no, you don't bring those type of money into my house. It's abhorrent to God. You can't buy your way out of your crime. You shall not deduct interest from loans to your fellow Israelites. Don't charge interest when you give your fellow Israelites loans. That's why we have the Free Loan Society here in Montreal, whether in food or money or food or anything else that can be deducted as interest. But you may deduct interest to loans from foreigners. Now, it's not talking about the regular gerim, but the nachri. The nachri were those who never intended to belong to Israel. They were not like the Ruths. They were more like the Orpah who went back to her God. Do not charge interest to your fellow Israelites, so that your God may bless you in all your undertakings in the land that you are about to enter and possess. So lend freely. Don't put these huge interest rates on them, because they're our brothers. When you make a vow to your God, do not put off fulfilling it, for your God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, will require it of you, and you will have incurred guilt. These are really important for us to examine in our lives, especially before the high holidays, especially before the time of Yom Kippur, where we're going to go before God to search our hearts. Did we make a promise to someone that we never fulfilled? Did we borrow money from someone that we never paid back? Do not put off fulfilling it, for you will have incurred guilt, whereas you incur no guilt if you refrain from vowing. That's why God says, don't make any oaths, don't make any vows. Yeshua said himself, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Don't say you're going to do something and not fulfill it. Don't tell me I'm going to meet you next Wednesday at 1:00 and then you just don't show up. You must fulfill what has crossed your lips and perform what you have voluntarily vowed to your God, having made the promise with your own mouth. How many people break that? And we don't even think about it. How many people do that every single day without even a second thought, adding darkness to this world, not light? When you enter an Israelite's vineyard, you may eat as many grapes as you want until you're full, but don't put them in a basket and take them away. Eat them there. When you enter the fellow Israelite's field of standing grain, you can pluck some ears with your hand, but don't put a sickle to your neighbor's grain. When a man takes a woman into his household as his wife, she becomes her husband. If she fails to please him because he finds something obnoxious about her, and he writes her a bill of divorce, gives her a ketubah, he hands it to her. Is that what the ketubah? No, not the ketubah, the get. When he gives her a get, he hands it to her and sends her away from his house. She leaves his house and becomes the wife of another man. But then this next man rejects her and gives her a get, writes her a bill of divorce, and hands it to her and sends her away from his house. Or the man dies, the first man who was the last had taken her as his wife. The first husband who divorced her shall not take her into his house again to become his wife, since she has been defiled, for that would be abhorrent to God. You must not bring sin upon the land that your God is giving you as a heritage. I don't know why. This is probably a chukim, but if God says it, we need to do it. He knows why. When a man has newly taken a woman into his household, he shall not go out with the army. or be assigned to it for any purpose. He shall be exempt 1 year for the sake of his household, to bring happiness to the woman he has taken. How just is that? How fair is that? When you first get married, how often do we hear that? I mean, during the war, someone just got married and then they had to go to war, and they left a widow behind. A handmill or an apple millstone shall not be taken in pawn, for that should be taken someone's life in pawn. Meaning, in other words, if someone owns a millstone, which is their means of making a living, of grinding their grain to be able to eat, he should not be able to pawn it because he's broke, because that would be taking someone's life in pawn. He needs to be able to make a living. And look at this one. If someone is found to have kidnapped and then enslaved or sold a fellow Israelite, that kidnapper shall die. Thus shall you sweep out evil from your midst. Look how many people have been kidnapped now by Hamas. They deserve death. Sweep out Israel from their midst. The land of Gaza was part of Israel. We left it, but it belongs to us. In cases of a skin disease, be careful to do exactly as the Levitical priest instructs you. Take care to do as I have commanded them. Remember what your God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, did to Miriam on the journey after you left Egypt. She came down with Sa'at and was put outside the camp. We need to be careful. And at that time, it had to do with gossip. When you make a loan of any sort to your compatriot, to someone you know, you must not enter the house to seize the pledge. Remain outside. It's his home. It's his property. Have respect. While the party to whom you have made the loan brings the pledge out to you, don't treat him as a second-class citizen. And if that person is needy, you shall not go to sleep in that pledge. You must return the pledge at sundown, that its owner, in other words, don't take his coat or don't take his cloak, don't take something that he needs as a pledge, so that its owner may sleep in the cloth and bless you, and it will be to your merit before your God. Justice. We must show justice. You shall not abuse a needy or destitute laborer, whether a fellow Israelite or a stranger in one of the communities of your land. All through the centuries, how many laborers have we heard have been treated so badly? And even today in China, where you see people who work for pennies while the products are being sold for thousands here in this country. And they work in horrible conditions. In the Middle Ages, how many were like that? Do not abuse a needy, someone who needs to earn a living, and a destitute laborer. You must pay out their wages when it's due on the same day before the sun sets, for the worker needs the money and urgently depends on it, or else a cry to God will be issued against you and you will incur guilt. How many people hold back wages from people on a whim? They incur guilt. This is bringing darkness into the world. Now, this is an interesting one. Parents shall not be put to death for children, nor children be put to death for parents. They shall each be put to death only for their own crime. There's another verse in the Torah that says, you cannot pay for the sin of another. Each of us is responsible for his own sin, its own crime. And here, parents shall not be put to death for children. Right now, there's a court case that's going on. That young man, the 14-year-old, who was caught with a gun that his father bought for him and he went into a school and he shot some kids. He's a 14-year-old. Now, I don't know all this situation. I haven't read all the details. I know that his parents are divorced, that he was bullied, that his father bought him the gun. But here it says the parent shall not be put to death for the children, and the children shall not be put to death for their parents. They shall each be put to death. Another thing about that is in Christianity, it says that Jesus died for the sins of humanity, of mankind. The Son of God, supposedly, was put to death for the sins of the others. Not according to the Torah. No one can die for the sins of anyone else. Each of us is responsible for his own sin. You have to come back to the Torah to see what justice is. Right now, there's no justice. And the children are suffering because we don't keep a lot of these. You shall not subvert the rights of the stranger or the fatherless or the orphan. You shall not take a widow's garment in pawn. We were told to take care of the stranger, the orphan, and the widow. Remember, we were slaves in Egypt, and that our God redeemed us from there. So I command you to observe this commandment. Remember these things, because you were once slaves. So have mercy the way I had mercy on you. When you reap the harvest in your field and overlook a sheaf in the field, don't go back to get it. Let it be for the stranger, for the orphan, and the widow, again, taking care of the weakest among us. This is completely opposed to the Darwin theory of the survival of the fittest. We are to take care of the orphan, in order that your God may bless you in all your undertakings. When you beat down the fruit of your olive trees, do not go over them again. Let them go to the stranger, the orphan, and the widow. Take care of them. If there's extra in your business, if you have leftovers in your restaurant, take care of the orphan, the widow, and the father and the stranger among us. When you gather the grapes of your vineyard, do not pick it over again. Let it go to the stranger among us, the orphan, and the widow. Always remember that you were slaves in the land of Egypt. Therefore, I urge you, I command you to observe this commandment. When there's a dispute between two people and they go to court and a decision is rendered declaring one in the right and the other in the wrong, and if the guilty one is to be flogged, the magistrate shall have the person lie down and shall supervise the giving of lashes by count as warranted by the offense. The guilty one may be given up to 40 lashes, but not more, lest being flogged further to excess, your peer be degraded before your eyes. This, again, was a law of compassion. Yes, people deserved, if they were guilty of something, they deserved their punishment, but punishment in accordance with what they've done. If you give more than 40 lashes, you could kill a person. And they would be lowered in the eyes of their peers. You must not.
It's amazing, sorry,
Yes,
that the 40 lashes is still something that you still hear. I
exactly.
mean, it comes from here. How many people know it comes from the
The
Tanakh,
Torah.
Torah?
Exactly. You must not muzzle an ox while it's threshing. When brothers dwell together and one of them dies and leaves no offspring, the wife of the deceased shall not become that of another party outside the family. Her husband's brother shall get together with her. He shall take her as his wife and perform the Levirite's duty. The first child that she bears shall be accounted to the dead brother, that his name may not be blotted out in Israel. We need to keep it in the tribes. That was at the beginning of Israel. And even today, there's some people who do that in the Orthodox community. But if that party does not want to take his brother's widow to wife, his brother's widow shall appear before the elders in the gate and declare, my husband's brother refuses to establish a name in Israel for his brother. He may not perform the duty of a levir. The elders of his town shall then summon him and talk to him. And if he insists, I do not want to take her, his brother widow shall go up to him in the presence of the elder, take off his sandal, spit in his face, and make this declaration. Thus shall be done to the man who will not build up his brother's house. He shall go in Israel by the name of the family of the unsandaled one. And if you remember the story of Ruth, Ruth was went to Naomi told her to go and lie down at the feet of Boaz, and Boaz wanted to marry her, but there was one who was ahead of him, who was in the family of her husband, the one who died, Elimelech, the sons who had died in Moab. So he went to him first, and he didn't want to marry her because he didn't want the responsibility and he didn't want to lose his own inheritance. So he took off his sandal and he made that declaration. He did not want to build up his brother's house. There, it did not say that they spit in his face, but this was where they get it from. If two parties are fighting, one with another, and the wife of one comes up to save her husband from his antagonist, and puts out her hand and seizes him by the genitals, you shall cut off her hand. Show no pity. You shall not have in your pouch. Oh, no, anyway, I don't know who does that today, but obviously you are destroying the generations, the seed that would come from his genitals, which is why she was punished in this way. You shall not have in your pouch alternate weights, larger and smaller. You shall not have in your house alternate weights, a larger and a smaller. You must have completely honest weights and completely honest measures if you are to endure long on the soil that your God is giving you. We must live by justice. And I know somebody who used to, he had a truck and he'd go and weigh the whatever he had in the container on the scale, come home and change the ticket so that he would have more money for what the weight. And God does not honor that. Somewhere down the line, you're going to pay for that. For everyone who does those things, everyone who deals dishonestly is abhorrent to your God. It's so important for us to be honest. Even if no one sees it, God sees it. And finally, remember what Amalek did to you on your journey after you left Egypt. How undeterred by fear of God, he surprised you on the march when you were famished and weary and cut down all the stragglers in your rear. Remember, we had just left Egypt. We were tired. We had the children, the women, the elderly, the sick were all in the rear, and Amalek came and attacked us and cut them down, the weakest among us. Therefore, when your God grants you safety from all your enemies around you in the land that your God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, has given you as a heritage, you shall blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. Do not forget. If we had blotted out Amalek from our midst, we would not have had Haman at Purim, and we would not have Hamas today. Arafat said that he was an Amalekite. So that I know that it's long, and I've put many of you to sleep which I have a gift of doing. But, but these are important to read, so important for us to read over and over. The king was told to write a Torah scroll for himself and to read it. Wake up, everybody. Wake up. You. There you go. I know I put you to sleep. It's okay. Oh, you had a little bit of wine. L'chaim. Good for you. Jerry? There you go. Okay, here we go. I love it. I have a very soothing voice. I used to be a hypnotherapist. I made relaxation tapes for people. But now, Miriam, you want to put on your picture? So
I'm just gonna chew this last thing and then I'll.
okay,
put
no
it on.
problem. Any final comments about what we've read today? Did anything stand out in your mind about how we are living today?
It just, it could seem, part of it could seem harsh if we don't see the context. I always repeat myself, but it seems so important that they don't seem like the people they've been surrounded by, like some of the practices, even a husband, I don't, like, he could go and say to his wife, I divorce you, and they're divorced. So that there has to be a reason, though, because they were still protected. They weren't just thrown out of the house. Like, they had to be protected somehow.
The women needed to be protected. In everything we do, let's say you're walking down the street and you find a wallet that someone dropped. And you open it up and it has cash in it, but you also has a driver's license. So you know who the wallet belongs to. It's very easy to take out the money and throw the wallet in the garbage. That's not what God is asking us to do. He wants us to find the person, go out of our way, find the person and return it. Even if no one saw, God sees. God watches what we do, and we live in a physical world, and we may not realize and understand the level of the spiritual, but we are spiritual beings covered by a physical body, and we are to bring light into the world. When we do something right, it brings light. When we do something wrong, it brings darkness. If we look around the world at the balance between light and darkness, what seems to be weighing? What seems to be winning?
Darkness.
It looks like darkness is winning. Families are falling apart. Children are suffering. Abortions. We are murdering our babies. There are so many things that we are doing that go against the Torah, and we make excuses for it. No one is going to stand for you before God on the day that we face him. And there will be a day of judgment. We know that. We know it even when we celebrate Yom Kippur, which is coming up in a month. In a month at Yom Kippur, we read of how the book is open and God will judge us according to what's in the book. Are we written in the book of life? I don't know what happens to the soul if we're not written in the book. Christians have made up all kinds of things about the afterlife, that there's hellfire and burning. I don't know. Maybe they were trying to make people so afraid that they wanted them to come to church and give them all their money. In Islam, you're going to have 72 virgins, but how long can these virgins remain virgins? And what if they may find a big surprise? We don't know the essence of the soul, but the soul expands and becomes more light the more we obey his Torah. Light is in our faces as we are with people. I think many of us are suffering those of us who want to walk with God, who carry the light, we're suffering when we see the things that are going on in the world. We feel the pain, others' pain, and we don't even know why sometimes. Sometimes we wake up and we feel so low. You can listen to the news and it would drive you absolutely insane. But instead of allowing it to bring us down, we can read these words and be encouraged. Read the Psalms and prepare ourselves to one day meet our God. If you don't believe in God, you can do anything you want. It won't make a difference. But if you do believe, then you know that there's going to be a reckoning. And that's why it's so important to learn what are the rules. I mean, I run a nonprofit. This organization, Kehilat Yashuv, is a nonprofit organization. I have to deal with the rules of the government every single day, which are constantly changing. Well, God gave us rules. He gave Adam 1, he gave Israel 10. So for
But
part
these
of,
are not rules. These are rules that bring fullness and wholeness when you keep them.
yes,
It's not. It's much more than rule. I know they are rules, but it's much bigger than that.
of course.
It's,
But if we make rules, the Creator's rules are even more important for us to keep.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, if does anybody, yes, Brian, you have something you want to add?
But the sign-in for the Saturday, is it 280 or 550?
I don't know what you mean now. I'll speak to you later about it. I don't know what you mean. You mean the Zoom on Shabbat?
Today's 826-96950.
I don't know what these numbers are, Brian. The login for tonight?
Zoom numbers.
Talk to me about it later, because that has nothing to do with our portion tonight. I'm asking, do you have something? Did something that you read resound in your being that you learned tonight that maybe you haven't seen before? Because I know that every time I read it, I see something new.
There was
Well,
something.
they didn't tell me that I had an appointment today. Oh, the day before. They tell me on today that I have a area, the bus is coming.
Yes, Brian, but that again has nothing to do with this portion. Okay, we'll talk later about that. Yes, Miriam.
What was anyway? There was something that you read in the portion was right up near the beginning. I wish anyway I can't remember, but it was really special.
About if a man takes a woman into her house after they're taken captive?
Before that, yeah, but before that.
Well, we began with that.
Anyway, I'll have to look again.
Yeah. Jerry, you have anything to add?
Oh, I just got off to hear special, but anyhow, go ahead.
You just got off to what?
No, I said I just not necessary to me to tell you that. Doesn't matter.
Okay. Sonia, anything you'd like to add? You're on mute, honey. You're on mute. You're welcome, Richard.
Okay.
Nice to see you.
I find that as the life goes on and there's many changes in the society, so the rabbinical court is supposed to make the right decisions for the couple or whatever. And according to the Jewish laws, and in the past, the men had the priority. But as the life goes on, the women begin to fight for their rights, and they seem to are forced to change the law, to change what their laws are. So there's things that must be changed, you know.
Well, the principles, laws may change, but the principles should remain the same. Remember, we're dealing right now at the time of the Bible, at the time that it was written, women were treated like cattle. Women had no value. They could be sold and bought. They could be killed at will. Anything could be done. They couldn't work. They had to only be either under their husband or their father. Those were different times. What God was slowly doing was putting women equal to men. He was allowing them more and more rights. It's a cycle. These things go in cycles. But the scriptures at that time, but the principle was that the women needed to be protected by the men, not hurt, not harmed, not sold. They needed to be protected. And it's the same thing today. The husband should be the spiritual head of the home, protecting the woman. The woman is the backbone of the home. The family unit is so important in order to bring children. God wanted us to multiply. He wanted us to have a family unit. He wanted us to have a healthy life, and he gives us these rules so that we would. We're the ones who break them. And then when we suffer the consequences of our disobedience, we get upset with God.
But the women had to fight for it. It's not that it came naturally. The women had to fight for their rights. And if the man is abusing her or whatever, she has a right for divorce.
But that's what we just read today. The man was not allowed to abuse the woman. That's what yeah. But we also have to remember we're living, if we understand the stories of the Torah and we take them for what God said, God created male and female and put us in the Garden of Eden. It was, hold on, Brian, it was a perfect world. Whether you believe that or not, that's what it says. It was perfect. And God said, the only thing that we shouldn't do is eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because we didn't know evil at that time. We had absolutely everything. Women was the last of God's creation. Everything he created became higher and higher and higher. It started with maybe a single cell amoeba that lived in the depth of the sea. It got higher to the birds of the air, the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, the animals, the things that crawled on the ground, then the animals, finally man, and then ultimately woman. She was the highest.
Okay, so why is it so many people are leaving the Hasidic way of life? Because they find it's very unfair. I mean, the men has always have the more rights than the women, because they find like maybe the women provoked him and maybe this, maybe that. So the women had to fight for it. If they couldn't, they had to leave the Hasidic way of life.
But the Hasidic way of life, the ultra-Orthodox Jews do not live by the simple Torah. They live by the other books, all the other writings, all the extra rules that God never asked for. We have to get back to the basics. We're so blinded by religion, we forget the simple things that God told us. That's what we're trying to do here, is to show you, let's go back to basics. What is God telling us? God tells us, do not add and do not take away anything from my words. Every religious leader, every religion in the world has added or taken away from the Torah that Moses received on Mount Sinai. And that's why the world is in such a mess.
Yeah. So many times is the fault of the the religion of the Hasidic thing.
Not only
And
that,
they're so strong that people believe in them.
but look what's going on in Islam today, or in ancient Christianity. I mean, the women have no rights. Women today,
Yeah.
not, what was it, last year or the year before in Toronto, a woman was murdered by her family because she wanted to marry someone outside, who they wanted her to marry. She was killed
Right.
outside Sharia law. These are extra laws that have nothing to do with the Torah. God didn't tell us that. And then we blame God. Has nothing to do with
No,
God.
you blame the religion, you blame the rabbis, you blame the synagogues.
Yeah,
And
then
you're turning away from religion.
exactly. But they turn away from God. They throw God out. It's like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And what we're
Well,
here,
because they cannot separate what is religion or what is, the figure is the same. That's what the religion is teaching.
that's why we're doing what we're doing here. We're coming back to this is what God said. So if someone tells you something and you know it's not what God said, you have a choice. You can either do it or not. But if it's what God said, then there are going to be consequences from him. I'm more afraid of disappointing him than other people. Other people can take my life, but God can take my soul.
So how many people do know what's in the Torah? How do you know what is in the Torah? If
We're reading it.
You have to study it or reading it or what?
Yeah, that's what we're doing
How
here.
do I know what's basically in the Torah?
But how you know is you don't fall asleep when I'm doing the readings. And you read it yourself.
It's not my fault. It's not my fault. It's my wine.
Of course it's the wine's fault. Of course I should have known that. Sonia, you're a riot. You know what you do? You buy, you download
Yeah.
onto your iPad or your computer. I
Yeah.
can send you the link. There are 2 programs that I read the Torah from. The one that I read that I shared tonight was called Sefaria. And you can, when you go into your Google, you save it and you read it. And not only will it give you the meanings of words, it'll give you.
So what do I look for when I go in?
I'll send it to you. I'll send you the link. There's another one
I
that
want to know because I don't have much knowledge what's in the Torah. So I want to know how the Torah, what does it teach? What are the,
well, that's what we're doing. If you were following along tonight, I was reading to you what's in the Torah.
Yeah.
Some of it.
The one where the
Yes, Sefaria, exactly, the one you have, Brian. So if we read it, we may not understand everything, but we'll understand enough. And the basic thing is to read the 10 Commandments. What does the 10 Commandments say? The first one, he says, I'm the God who brought you out of the land of Egypt. Have no other gods. Number 2, don't make any images of these gods. Don't bow down to them. Number 3, don't take his name, his words in vain. Believe what he says. Trust what he says. 4, honor the Shabbat. Keep the Sabbath day. 6 days you're going to work. The 7th day is a day for me. It's a sign that God exists. 5, honor your mother and your father, that your days may be long upon the land. Do not steal. Do not murder. Do not commit adultery. Do not gossip. Don't bear false witness against your neighbor, and do not covet anything that he has. Those are the basics of what the Torah says. Everything else now that we're reading relates to those and expands upon them.
I want to ask you something. Maybe it has nothing to do with what we're doing tonight. What is the difference between the Torah, what is it, Talmud, the Mishnah. And are these 5 books of Moses? Is that it?
The 5
I
books
don't
of
know.
Moses is what's called the written Torah. It begins with it gives you the whole story of the history of the people from Adam and Eve to Abraham, where the nation of the people were created, were formed as a people, and why we were formed as a people, bringing us to Mount Sinai, giving us the commandments, and then what happens to us the 40 years in the desert, and then what happens all through our history. But the basics are the 5 books. Moses wrote, we know for sure, the first 4. The 5th one he may have started, and then it may have been continued by Joshua, or God, because God spoke to him directly, face to face, and he wrote it down, which helps us to know. Later, after we were kicked out of the land, taken to Babylon, then the rabbis start to begin, the sages start to begin to compile the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud. There's other Talmuds, other writings, books and books and books and books of rules and regulations to build a fence around these 10, around the Torah, so that we don't, if we break the others, it won't be as bad as if we break God's rules. So all those are extra books, the Talmud, the Kabbalah, some of them are wonderful things in them. I learn from them. I don't agree with everything they say, but I learn. And then Christianity came along. They added their book, the New Testament, scroll upon scrolls, thousands of scrolls, where they have formed their religion, taking it from Judaism. Islam came along and created their own books, and they have their own laws. But the bottom line is the Torah is the basis for all humanity. Yes, Jerry,
Oh, no, when you're ready, I just have a comment when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Well, I wasn't ready so quickly, but okay. So I just first of all, very nice. So I like to speak in sometimes I quiet, but now I'll make up for it maybe. So so everybody in general, and for you in particular, Sonia.
Yeah.
Particular, but it's for general. First of all, the Chaim, it's always good to have a little drink in our religion. We have a little Chaim, which is good.
A little schnapps.
Little schnapps. And I'm not sure who was sleeping today, but other people sleep once in a while, and it's the soothing voice of Peggy, and we should call her just before, if we can't sleep. I would like to call her. Is that okay, Peggy? I can call you 1212 and just what's
Wake up.
yeah. So that's not the worst. So the other thing is, which you're addressing, which is wonderful to see. Just we're all getting to know you now. Your soul is crying out for you now. Your soul is crying that you want to know. But this is, I haven't been introduced to you in this way, but your soul is crying that you want to know, and that's a blessing for you that you're coming. And sometimes you cannot maybe know the whole Torah. It's not easy. Sometimes you can have some guidance, and I think Peggy is perfect person to help you with guidance. For me to add my 2 cents, and I'm sure like certain people have a lot of comments as well, like Miriam has her own comments as well, but the basic line on one issue is between women and men, for example, which you brought up, which concerned you quite a bit. Now, the bottom line of life, if we could do it, is I'm going to use just one word and try to expound on it. It's like the mother and father of life. And the bottom line, and even what I'm saying, I don't know for sure. If someone will correct me, I'll change. Is loving kindness. Now, if you're with a person, it's your husband or whoever it happens to be, if the person loves you and if they treat you with kindness, since that is the mother and father of everything, that includes respect. It includes gentleness. It includes everything. and therefore you will not have to fight for your rights. When one fights for the rights, the women and the men, it's like a pendulum. It never comes to equal. It always goes over. And Hashem doesn't want you to do that, that we should make up our own minds. He wants you to follow the Torah, as Peggy will say, because we cannot judge that. And that's what they don't want us to do. Because when men and women are fighting, there will always be a shift. And who is going to be right? And who's going to take advantage? So if we had loving kindness, you wouldn't have to fight. So how do we achieve that? Now, I don't have all the answers. Maybe I don't even have any answers. But I would say, I'm just guesstimating, that the best way to receive loving kindness is to give it. I believe if you give loving kindness to any person, that mostly you will receive it back. There's a saying, and I don't like to use these sayings, what you give, you shall receive. But you give your kindness, and I'm gleaning from you in your speeches lately, the searching and the kindness and the crying out of your soul that you wish to, and this is a wonderful thing that you have. And as long as you're going along this route, I think you're going to come closer and closer to what you're looking for. No one will ever. We cannot come perfect. We are not perfect. We're not made perfect. We're made perfect human beings, but that does not mean we are perfect. That you understand the difference. We're perfect in that we're human, and human are not necessarily perfect. We have a couple of natures. We have a good nature and not so good a nature, and we have to, because if we only had a good nature, we wouldn't be human beings. We would be angels. We wouldn't have any choice. And I'm not going to labor this for a long time. I think it's enough for now. I'm just going to end on something I said a couple of times ago. Again, that I believe you're on the right track. I believe Peggy is a good source for you to guide you. And Yosha, I think we're on the way.
That's very good, Jerry. I appreciate that. Remember that song? Thy loving kindness is better than life. God's loving kindness is better than life. And it's interesting because when Yeshua was asked, how do you sum up the 10 commandments? He said, love God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with everything that you have, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. So when as we're learning to love and to trust God, we learn to love ourselves. And the more we learn to love ourselves, we deal with all our shtick. We deal with all the issues from the past where we can't forgive ourselves, where we can't get past and the things that we don't like about who we are, because everybody has that. And the more we do, the more we come to terms with these things, the more we're able to love others. And what's loving? Doing good things for them. Like you said, having mercy, having compassion, having loving kindness toward our neighbors. And that will change the world. That's what will bring in tikkun olam, the healing of the world, when each of us are doing that. And that's my desire, is to spread that in each of us, to spread that loving kindness, but not just an act, not just a fake act. I'm going to do this because I'm supposed to, but because it comes from the heart. Some of us have had what's called an epiphany, Sonia. We have something where we know that God has touched us in some way. We know without a doubt that he's real. We have sensed him in our lives. We see him working in our lives, and we know that we can trust him. And more that we keep his commandments, the more we see him blessing us and working in us and protecting us. It's amazing, absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and if we can impose upon Peggy, Sonia, and if we can impose upon Peggy, Miriam and Baruch, that means we can ask her to do something we're supposed to do all this here by simcha. Well, I think you understand Hebrew more than me. I only know a couple of
With
words.
joy, with joy.
With joy. So if Peggy will sing a little song for us at the end, we should be happy. And that is something. Oh, so you see, Deja, you're smiling.
What do you
That,
think?
you know, that smile that you gave, and Peggy is smiling, and Miriam has a smile, and Baruch is
And I have a smile.
That's it.
Smile,
My picture like behind me.
Smile though your heart is aching. Smile even though it's breaking. When there are clouds in the sky, you'll get by. If you smile through your fear and sorrow, smile and maybe tomorrow you'll see the sun come shining through. For you just light up your face with gladness, hide every trace of sadness. Although a tear may be ever so near, that's the time you must keep on trying. Smile, what's the use of crying? You'll find that life is still worthwhile if you just smile. Just smile.
We can invite all our friends to come in, Sonia, even if they don't want to hear the whole thing towards the end. If Peggy will have a little thing like this at the end, people maybe they'll join us even at 9 o'clock and then come earlier, and
You
we'll
never know.
increase, and we'll be able to increase and pass on this wonderful thing. Now,
Yeah.
Sonia, I'm addressing you, everybody. Don't you feel better and relieved? You were very concerned with we don't want to mention, with the men and the women and the back and forth and blah blah blah. Don't you feel better? A little sing song, and it's better. This is what we should do.
Well, to tell you the truth, I do it myself because this morning I watched the debate last night between President Trump and Kamala Harris. And to tell you the truth, I was so upset by it, by so many of the things that I saw. But some of the others, more people being killed. And it's just like every time I turn on the news and I look at what's going on and the things that are happening, and I just sometimes get pulled so down. And I say, am I making even a little dent, like in what I'm doing here? And then I
What were
decided,
you, Peggy, what were you upset about?
I don't want to get into it. I don't want to
the,
get I don't want to get into that because I don't want to go back there. So what I did was I looked at the sun outside. I went out on the balcony. I watered my flowers, put makeup on, fixed my hair, got dressed up in something brand new that's shiny. And I said, you know what? I'm going to start to sing. And then I turned on some Hebrew music that I love. Ein od milvado, velo kol haaretz kevodo, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Melech v'ani avdo. So I am remembering that I'm God's servant, that it's all in his hands. Whoever wins is in his hands. Whatever happens in the world is in his hands. I don't have to carry it on my shoulders. I just have to do what is apportioned for me to do today. That's all I can do.
Leave it to God.
Leave
but
it
that's
to God.
that's not the only way, I mean,
Yeah,
if you
it's
have to fight for something, you have to know how to fight for it.
Yes,
I mean,
you're right.
our leaders make mistakes and they
Yes.
don't do the things right.
Yeah,
And
so
then
you
we
do the
suffer
best.
for it.
Exactly.
People suffer for it.
Exactly.
I'm going to
It's
answer
not
that.
in God's hands. I mean, God is there, but
No,
you
but you
have to
still-
do the fighting.
Yes,
You're
you
responsible
go out.
for your action.
Yes, you go out and vote. You do the right thing. We do what what we're reading according to the Torah.
Right. I'd like to answer that, Sonia, again. I don't know. I'm not, don't think I'm, I mean, we know each other for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. We're probably speaking more than ever before, but it's good. What I'm going to answer, anything that's difficult is a challenge for us. And the thing is that we are placed here, my belief is to overcome challenges, and the challenges stimulate us to do good things. And without the challenges, we would just sort of coast along. And I don't think the Lord wants us to coast along. He wants us to have challenges and do things. Like your questions that you brought up tonight stimulated me, to inspired me to put on some answers. And I think Peggy gave me a pass mark with that tonight. So and she's smiling, you see. So the stimulation, it should not hurt us. God forbid, it should not hurt us. But it's good to be stimulated. It's good to have questions and everything. And we should try. We cannot do it in every respect. We should try to overcome challenges and help us improve. And I do like your input, Sonia, very, very much, because you have questions, and that's fantastic, and it's stimulating. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think without having questions, it would be boring.
Exactly.
But Sonia,
hear-
just
You
one,
gotta have a debate, you gotta talk about it, you know.
Yes.
yeah, Sonia, just one
Yes.
thing when you said, and you're
Oh.
right, when you said about we have to fight. It's not, when we said it's not God, but the point is not that God will, like we have to take actions. We have free will and we make choices in everything we do, even the little things, like everything we do. But there's a difference between knowing that there's a loving God. Hey, I remember the verse where it said, God watches you, like is there in what you're doing. Remember it right at the beginning of the portion you read, Peggy. It said God is watching you, sees what you're doing, and what He's watching what you're doing. So I'm saying there is a sense that there's a protective God. You know, he leads us. Doesn't mean he like we don't take actions. I mean, it's very hard to know what exactly that means. We can't just sit by and wait for God to do things, but we have to take actions. But God is in that part of our life too. So
Yeah, that's why I told you the story before. I don't know if you heard, if you were on yet, but this week, Miriam came over. We were going for a walk. Did you hear that? And there was a woman sitting downstairs in the lobby of my apartment building. And she was like upset because she looked at me and she said, do you know so-and-so, this lady on, and she described her to me. I said, yeah, that's Ivanka. She said, I'm visiting from New Brunswick. I called her this afternoon. We made arrangements to go out for dinner. And I've been waiting here for 1 hour. I'm leaving tomorrow. I'm going back to New Brunswick, and I'm worried I don't know what to do. Well, I could have easily said, well, Miriam and I are going for a walk. Good luck. But we didn't say that, because what we read in the Torah tonight is you go out of your way for your neighbor. So I called my janitor. I called a neighbor. We finally found someone who was able to get in touch with her daughter, who was coming over. Somebody else came into the lobby. She started to help. So there was a whole group of us who were standing there, and we wouldn't leave. It must have taken between a half an hour and 3/4 of an hour before we finally went for our walk. But in the meantime, we went out of our way until this woman, and it turned out that she was sleeping. We were afraid that something had happened to her. But that's what the Torah teaches. Go out of your way for your neighbor. Help people.
But people with good intention, kind people, would do it anyway, whether they believe in God or they don't believe in God. I must say that's me. You know, I like to help. So if somebody is there, I would like to do something for them. I don't just can leave them
But,
like that.
That
But that's
shows
me.
that shows
That's me.
that shows
My
that God is
soul.
living.
My
That
soul.
shows that your soul is connected to the divine, that God
Right.
does speak with you, that you are connected to his Torah. Because let me tell you, those Hamas who went and kidnapped and murdered those people are not connected to his Torah. They are the enemy. There's only two camps, those who walk with God and those who don't. And what the Torah does is help us to have an even stronger walk with God,
You
to
may
learn
not
to
even
trust him more.
recognize that you're walking with,
Yeah.
like for
Yeah,
example,
we didn't stop to think of that we were doing, oh, because this is in the Torah. It
even my
occurred
brother who doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. It comes from yourself.
from
And,
exactly.
and Sonia,
Yeah.
that's as Peggy would say, that's God's goodness expressing in yourself. So the
Right.
goodness that you have, you maybe think it's all yours. Like you didn't will yourself to come into the world. You came in here. You came in here. It wasn't you who willed yourself to come in. When you do a good deed, it's coming from something within you. What is that within you?
Something. What is that something?
But that
Exactly.
something is, as Peggy will say, that something is God's goodness that's within you, and your it's being expressed through your actions. So it's not necessarily what you think that you're doing that by yourself, but it's through God. So everything you're saying it's yours, it's in conjunction with God. And I don't like to use expressions because but there is like a book, I'm not sure where I got it from, I don't really like it, and it says God will help those who help themselves.
Yes.
I really don't like to use those type of things, but anyhow, let me finish on this one thing. Your expressions of goodness is God working through you.
God, when you were born, when you were conceived, Sonia, his essence, his spirit, it says his ruach, he breathed his ruach into you. When
That's
that
the
ruach,
soul. That's the soul.
he gave you your soul. Your soul is connected to
Right.
him. And within that soul lies his commandments, lies the goodness that he is. But then we have the other aspect of ourselves that Jerry mentioned before. There's part of ourselves that is negative, that's the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. We have the good and we have the evil, and every single day we need to choose. That's our battle. Do we do good or do we do wrong? Do I steal from the store even though I need it, or do I not steal? God gives us the guidelines, but we have to choose to obey or not to obey. And God says, choose to do good. That's life. And to do wrong is death. He wants us to choose life. That's what the Torah is teaching us.
Okay, I think Brian wants to say something.
Yes, Brian, you're on mute.
Can't hear you.
Brian, you're
on mute,
muted.
Brian.
You're muted.
You're muted, Brian.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
had this friend who was from Trinidad, and he was working in the same, came to where I was working, and I would go to his house after and have some roti and stuff like that. And they were playing on the grounds near Van Horn and the so-called street near that area. And somebody's kid ran into the street, and I ran and I caught the kid from the street.
Good for you.
Attention.
Good for you.
And the lady would like to reward me, but I didn't take no rewards for the lady.
Could you repeat what Brian said, because I couldn't make it out?
Brian was visiting someone from Trinidad on Van Horn, and there was a little kid who ran out into the street, and he ran out and saved the kid.
Okay.
Yeah, that was very good, Brian.
Did they say thank you? Did you have a Magan David on you so they're making sure that you're a Jew and you're helping somebody? I wear my Magan David all the time now. I don't care where I go or whatever.
Yeah, I wear my little Torah. Jerry, do you want to do the Aaronic benediction?
Yes, I will. Okay, this benediction is written in the Torah, and it's in Numbers, Naso, in Numbers, and of all the words in the Torah, they wanted these words should be said in the original Hebrew of specifically, and it's so it's the congregation will say, "May it be thy will, Lord our God and God of our fathers, that this blessing which thou hast commanded to pronounce upon thy people Israel may be a perfect blessing, forever free from stumbling and iniquity. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kirishonu b'dushasoi shel Aaron, v'tzivonu levarech es amo Yisrael be'ahavo yevorechecho Adonai v'yishmorecho Yoel Adonai panav elecho v'chuneka Yiso Adonai panav elecho v'yosem lecho shalom. V'samu et shemi al b'nei Yisrael va'ani arborachem.
And what was said is, may the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord shine his face upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you shalom. So shall they put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. So we end with the Aaronic benediction, which is a wonderful prayer. May we have a blessed week, a week where we bring acts of kindness into the world, where we do good deeds that come from the heart, that really show that God is with us, so that we can bring light into this world. We need to increase the light. Let us be Or L'Goyim, a light to all the nations. So I wish you a...
Peggy?
Yes,
Right,
Jeff.
Brian wants to say.
See my picture? My face doesn't look clear because the light above me is on.
Yeah,
If I turn it off, then you'll have more light in my face.
it's up to you. If you want to show us your handsome face, then you can turn it off.
You can't. I'm in a backlight. The light
Yeah.
behind me is all backlight.
Okay,
And
all
I
right.
can't show it off, my face gets darker.
Well, you look very good anyway. You look more tanned. Okay. Enjoy the rest of your wine, Sonia.
Thank
Jerry,
you. I
was good
finished
to
it already.
you
You see,
finished it.
Peggy,
No,
I need
fine,
to
it's
develop. I need to develop that,
You need to develop wine or the Torah?
the Torah. The liking wine, I already okay.
Good.
I developed that already a long time ago.
Enjoy, enjoy, enjoy.
But now I have to develop this. the
Well, that's why
Torah.
that's why we're here, and you're so welcome every Wednesday night. And when you miss, you just listen to the recordings, so that
Thank you.
and you can listen to this one again. You know, you don't have to listen to the whole thing at once. As we go through, I'm going to send you the link so
Yeah.
that you can open the Bible and read it from the beginning. Go right to Bereshit and start reading. And if you have any questions, you speak to us.
It's
can
in
put-
English. It's in English
English and Hebrew.
and Hebrew.
Yeah,
The other one is the one that's Hebrews on the left side and English on the right side.
exactly.
Oh,
All right.
okay.
Okay, you take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you so
you.
much for joining us.
Thank you.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.